We begin now at the top of the page in Meseches Berachos Daf Yud This is Berachos Daf 12a. The Gemara just finished discussing the brachos that are said in the Beis Hamikdash as part of the morning procedure of bringing karbanos and kriyas Shema. And the Gemara said they say one bracha, only the bracha of Yotzer Or. And the Gemara said it makes sense that it's Yotzer Or. That's what it would mean when it says that you see from here that the brachas are not ma'akev one another. You can say one bracha without the other. In other words, Rabbi Zreika was saying that you can say the bracha of Yotzer Or without the bracha of Ahava Rabbah in the Beis Hamikdash, and brachos are not ma'akvin zeh zeh. But if the bracha would be Ahava Rabbah, there would be no proof that in general the brachas are not ma'akev one another. It's possible that you only said Ahava Rabbah and did not say Yotzer Or for a different reason, and the Gemara will now explain what that reason is. The Gemara says, if you say that the bracha that was said in the Beis HaMikdash was Ahava Rabbah, not the bracha of Yotzer Or, Hava Amri, that's the bracha that they said in the Mikdash. My brachos ein ma'akvo zu ezu. What would it then mean that it shows us that the brachos are not ma'akev one another? It wouldn't be a proof at all. Dilma hai delo amri Yotzer Or mishum delo matazman Yotzer Or. Maybe the reason why we're not saying in the Beis Hamikdash the bracha of Yotzer Or, as we pointed out earlier, this was very early in the morning. The light, it still hadn't become light outside, so you don't say Yotzer Or, creator of light. V'chi matazman Yotzer Or hava amri. And maybe when the time came for the time to say Yotzer Or, so we would say Yotzer Or. There'd be no proof at all that the fact that they said Ahava Rabbah in the Mikdash would not prove that the brachas are not ma'akev one another. So Gemara says, V'im mechlala mai. So even if it is just implied, isn't it a good implication? Who cares that he didn't say it outright? So the Gemara says, no, D'im mechlala liolam Ahava Rabbah hava amri. Since it's only implied, it could be that really the bracha that they say is only the bracha of Ahava Rabbah. V'chimot azman Yotzer Or hava amri le. And then when Yotzer Or would come, they would say Yotzer Or. Umay brachos ein ma'akvo zu ezu. And what does it mean that the brachos are not ma'akev one another? Seder brachos. It means that the order of the brachos are not ma'akev one another. In other words, what he was saying was not that the brachos are not ma'akev, that you can say one without the other, but you don't need to say them in order. That was a possibility. Since that was a possibility, there's no proof 100% that the bracha is Yotzer Or. It could be that the one bracha they said was Ahava Rabbah, and Yotzer Or was going to be said later, and they're not ma'akev in the sense that the order is not ma'akev, so we have no definitive proof that he was saying to say the bracha of Yotzer Or. Gemara now continues at the two dots. V'koron aseres hadibros shema v'hoya im shamoa v'yomer emes v'yatziv v'avodo birchas kohanim. In the Beis Hamikdash, the procedure would be to read the aseres hadibros. Then they would read shema v'hoya im shamoa and v'yomer. Then they would say the bracha of emes v'yatziv. Then they would say a bracha that was kind of like ritzei that we say in Shemona Esrei, a bracha to accept the karbanos. Finally, they would say birchas kohanim. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, af bigvulin bikshu likros kain. This was true even in the outside the Beis Hamikdash. They wanted to say the Aseres Hadibros as part of the Shema. Ela shekvar bitelo mipnei taromes haminim. However, because of the complaints of the Amei Haaretz might say that why are you saying Aseres Hadibros specifically? Maybe only the Aseres Hadibros were heard from the mouth of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Maybe the rest of the Torah was not Chas v'Shalom. So therefore, we do not say Aseres Hadibros as part of the Shema in order that people should not assign a greater importance to the Aseres Hadibros than the other parts of the Torah. Tanya Nam Yach, we have a brayso like this as well. Rabbi Nosson Omer, Rabbi Nosson says, Bigvulin Bikshu Likros Kain. They wanted to read this outside the Beis Hamikdash, Ela Shekvar Bitlum Mivnei Taromes Haminim, but they annulled that because of the complaints of the Amei Haaretz. Rava bar Rachana Savar Lemikvinu Besura. Rava bar Rachana wanted to establish saying the Aseres Hadibros in Surah. Amar le Rav Chisda Kvar Bitlum Mipnei Taromes Haminim. Rav Chisda said to him again that they nullified this because of the Taromes Haminim. Ameimar Savar Lemikvinu Benahardoi. Ameimar wanted to say them in Nahardoi. Amar le Rav Ashi, and Rav Ashi said to him, Kvar Bitlum, they already nullified it, Mipnei Taromes Haminim, because of the Taromes of the Minim. Then the Brisa said that on Shabbos they would say one additional bracha because the Mishmar of the Kohanim would then switch. One Mishmar would leave, one Mishmar would come in. Uve Shabbos mosifin bracha achas leMishmar hayotze. On Shabbos they would add one bracha for the Mishmar that was the outgoing Mishmar, the Mishmar that was going out. My bracha achas, what was this bracha? Amar Rav Chelbo says, Mishmar hayotze omer leMishmar hanichnas. The outgoing Mishmar would say to the incoming Mishmar, Misha shochin es shemo babayis hazeh, he who dwells his name in this house, hu yashkin beinechem ava v'yachva v'shalom v'reyus, he should dwell amongst you love and brotherhood and peace and friendship. Makom she'amru laharich. The Mishnah was talking about the fact that some brachas are long and they should be long, and the brachas that are shorter should be shorter and they should not be switched. So now the Gemara gets into a discussion. What happens if a person had in mind to say one bracha but ended up not saying that bracha and said another bracha? What is the halacha? The following case. Pshita, it is obvious the following case. Let's say a person has a cup of wine in his hands. And he believes that he has in his hand beer. He begins the bracha thinking it's beer. So when he starts the bracha, he has in mind to say shahakol. But he finishes with the bracha of borei preagafen, of the wine bracha, which is the proper bracha. Yotze, he is certainly yotze. Even though at the beginning of the bracha he had in mind for the wrong bracha, he is still yotze. Because even if he would have finished with shahakol, he still would be yotze. Because we learned in the Mishnah, on all things, if you say shahakol, you are yotze. In other words, since shahakol is a bracha that b'di'evet is good on all things, since he had in mind for shahakol, and even had he finished with shahakol, it would have been okay. So in this case, it's like a kal v'chomer. If he started out thinking to say shahakol and he finished with borei preagafen, which actually was the proper bracha, he's certainly yotze. What about the reverse? What if a person is holding in his hand beer? Because and he thinks it's wine. And he begins the bracha thinking it's wine, thinking he's going to say borei preagafen. And then he finishes with the bracha on beer, the bracha of the shahakol. What's the halacha in that case? Basar ikar bracha azlin. And do we follow the ikar bracha, the main bracha? When he started out, he was thinking to say hagafen, which would have been the wrong bracha. Oh, basar chasima azlinan. Or the fact is, he finished with shahakol, he finished with the proper bracha. Maybe the fact that he finished with the bracha of shahakol, the proper bracha, is not enough, though. Maybe the fact that he started off thinking to say the bracha on wine, maybe that would make it no good. So the Gemara is going to want to bring a proof from a brisa related to our discussion of the brachos that you say before Kriyat Shema. Tav Shema, let's bring a proof. Shachar is pasach b'yotzer or v'sayim b'mariv aravim lo yatza. Shachar is if a person begins the bracha properly with yotzer or, but he finishes improperly with mariv aravim, he's not yotze. Pasach b'mariv aravim, if he starts with mariv aravim, v'sayim b'yotzer or, and he finishes with yotzer or, so he finishes properly, yotze, he is yotze. Arvis by mariv, pasach b'mariv aravim, if he starts the right way with mariv aravim, v'sayim b'yotzer or, but he finishes with yotzer or, lo yotze, he's not yotze. Pasach b'yotzer or, v'sayim b'mariv aravim, if he starts with yotzer or, and he finishes with mariv aravim, yotze, then he is yotze. Klolo shel davar, the rule is hakol holech achar hachasum. Everything follows the way you finish. So from this brisa, simple explanation, it sounds like it doesn't matter how you began the bracha, it only matters how you finish the bracha, and the same would be true in our case. If you finish the bracha properly, even though he started out thinking that he's making a bracha on wine, he started out thinking to make a borei preagafen, but he finished properly with shahakol, so that would be okay. The Gemara now says maybe there's a difference between the case of Kriyat Shema, the brachos of Kriyat Shema, and the case of wine and beer. Shani hasam dekamar baruch yotzer hamaoros. Maybe it's different over there because at the end you're saying baruch yotzer hamaoros. So you're not finishing. It's not like shahakol where you say baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech olam shakol niyeh bidvaro. When you say a bracha in the brachos of Shachris, you start out with baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech olam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, or whatever the case is, and then you finish again with baruch atah Hashem, either hamariv aravim or yotzer hamaoros. So maybe the finish in those cases is a stronger reason to go by the finish because it finishes with baruch atah Hashem. There's a bracha there. Maybe that's why it's different. And the Gemara now explains, Hanichol Rav, that works according to Rav, Damar Kol Bracha She'ein Bo Haskaras Hashem, Ein a Bracha Shapir. Rav says that what makes a bracha is saying the name of Hashem. So that's why this deflection is a good deflection according to Rav. Meaning, since according to Rav, the main part of a bracha is Baruch Atah Hashem, so we go by the chasima, we go by the finish of the brachas, in the brachas of Kriyat Shema, because those finishing brachas have Hashem's name, they're perfectly legitimate brachas, and it doesn't matter how you started in the beginning. Rabbi Yochanan Damar called bracha shein b'malchus ein a bracha ma'ikol ameimar. So, but the Gemara says, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that says a bracha needs malchus. A bracha needs to have the word melech ha'olam in it. So the finishing of these brachas doesn't have that. So then maybe you do have a proof. Maybe you do have a proof from here that everything goes by the finish, because the Baruch Atah Hashem Yotzer HaMa'oros is not really a real bracha. It doesn't have melech ha'olam, and it seems to be that we go after how you finish. So do we have a proof or not? But the Gemara says still no. Rabbi Barula said that when it comes to the brachos of Kriya Shema, we always want to mention the midah of both day and night, both times. So in the daytime we want to mention light and darkness, and in the nighttime we want to mention light and darkness. So in that case, ki kamar bracha malchus meikara travayu kamar. When you started the bracha, you had in mind for light and darkness for day and night all along anyway. So it doesn't matter how you start or how you finish, it's still going to be okay. Or rather, we should say the fact that you finished correctly is good enough because you had in mind for everything really when you started. So maybe only in those cases the finish makes a difference. The fact that you finish it correctly makes it good. But who says that over here the fact that you finish correctly would be good? So the Gemara still has no proof one way or the other by this case where you started out Bori Pragofen and you finished off properly with Shahakol. Maybe the finish is not good enough. Gemara tries one more proof. Tashma will bring a proof miseifa from the end of that very brisa. Klolo shel davar. It said that the general rule is hakol holech achar hachasom. Everything goes after how you finish the bracha. So that seems to be a general rule that maybe we can apply to our case. Klolo shel davar leisuye mai. What is this general rule including? Mai lav leisuye hada amran. Isn't it including our very case? The case here where you start Bori Pragaf and you end Shahakol, the rule is you follow the Chasom and it should be perfectly good. The Gemara says, Lo, no, lesuye nam havitamre. It includes a case of bread and dates. As the Gemara will explain, if you mix up the bracha in the beginning by bread and dates, it might be different than beer and wine. Hey Chidami, what's the case over here with bread and dates? So, ilema, if you're going to say, Da'achal nahama v'kasavar detamri, he's eating bread, but he thought that he had eaten dates. Achalu pasach adaita detamri, he started the bracha thinking to make al ha'etz v'al pri ha'etz, thinking that he ate dates. V'sayim b'denama, but then he realized he ate bread and he made the benching for bread. Hainubai, and that should be no different than our original question, where you start out with the wrong bracha, you finish with the proper bracha. That should not be any different. But the Gemara says, Lo tzricha, no, there is a case where it's needed, where this case might be different. Let's say a person's eating dates, he thinks he's eating bread. He starts to bench as though he were eating bread. Then he remembers, and then he says instead the bracha of alo eitz v'al priyo eitz, the finishing bracha on dates. Yotza, in that case, he is indeed Yotze. Because the fact is, even if a person would bench on dates, he would still be Yotze b'di'evet. My time, what's the reason? The tamri nami meizan zaini. Because dates also can fill a person, can give a person like a meal, that type of feeling as though he ate a meal. So basically the Gemara is saying that when the Brisa says that we follow the way you finish, that might only apply in this one particular case where a person was going to bench on dates, then realized he had made a mistake, and then he finished off saying the proper al ha'etz bracha. In that case, since benching could be b'di'evet work on dates, because dates are also meizan zaini, they also fill a person up, they give a person the feeling of having eaten a meal, therefore it works. But it is no proof to our case of wine and beer, and that's how the Gemara concludes over here. They don't have any proof one way or the other what would happen if you were drinking beer, starting out making a bore pragaf, and then realize your mistake and finish off with a shahakol. Now we're at the two dots. Amar Rabba Bar Chinana Saba Mishmei de Rav. Rabba Bar Chinana says in the name of Rav, Kol Shelo Amar Emes V'Yatzev Shacharis Ve'emes Ve'emuna Arvis Lo Yatzi Yadecho Vaso. If you don't say Emes V'Yatzev in the morning and Emes Ve'emuna in the evening, he does not fulfill his obligation. Shenemar, like it says, Lahagid Ba'Boker Chastecho Ve'emunascha Ba'Leilos. In the morning we say your Chesed, and in the evening we say Emuna. Emuna in the evening is self-explanatory from the pasuk. In terms of Lahagid Ba'Boker Chastecha, Rashi explains that Emes V'Yatziv is a bracha about HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Chesed, because it's about the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu took us out of Mitzrayim. V'yamar Rabba Bar Chinana Saba Mishmei de Rav, another statement from Rabba Bar Chinana in the name of Rav, HaMispal, when a person's davening, Kishu Koreya, when he bends down, Koreya V'Baruch. In Shmona Esrei, you should bend your knees, you should bend down by the Baruch, Ukishu Zokef V'Shem, and he should straighten up by the name of Hashem. Amar Shmuel says, my time, and what's the reason to Rav? What's the reason of Rav? Techsiv, because it says Hashem Zokef Kifufim. Hashem straightens those who are bent, so we straighten up at the name of Hashem. Meisvei, the Gemara now asks, from a different pasuk, it says, Mipnei Shemi Nochasu. It says, in front of my name, a person should be humbled, a person should be low. Sounds like a person should bow at the name of Hashem. Gemara says, no, miksiv bishmi, it doesn't say at my name, when you mention my name. Mipnei shemiksiv, it says before my name. So before the person's name, he should be bending down, and then he straightens up. Amar le Shmuel lechia barav bar uryan tovei malach milsa mal yasa da amar avach. So Shmuel said to Chia barav, I want to tell you a nice thing that your father Rav said. Hachi amar avach, so said your father. Kishu korea bebarach. When a person bends down, he should bend down at barach. Kishu zokef b'shem. And when he stands up, he should stand up, or straighten up, he should straighten up at the name of Hashem.